Here's Kido Butai. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this all in one video, the playthrough, the explanation, etc. We'll see how we feel after the rules explanation, because it may take longer than I think. It's a fairly short solitaire game covering the Battle of Midway from Japan's point of view. It's a solo game, so you have no idea where the U.S. is, etc. And what you're going to be doing is just trying to figure out how to deal with your own carrier group and strikes when you know maybe where the U.S. You may know that the U.S. forces are within striking range is basically what you have. Well, that you know where they are. You don't, and you'll also know whether they know where you are. And if they know where you are, they can hit you. If you know where they are, you can hit them. The problem is you're going to largely be looking at trying to just cycle your planes and hope that you don't get really unlucky or whatever as you try to launch your attacks against the American fleets. So looking at the components, there isn't a lot. You have this little tiny board. These are hard to read, the counters, but when we zoom in, they're pretty easy. Each of the Japanese carriers has a number on it. It also has a lower number on the back side. That's how many planes it can hold. And then these will be the planes themselves. Like a carrier, Midway has a little counter which can be damaged and destroyed. For the U.S. carriers, they're actually in a cup to begin with, because you may or may not, well, when you find a carrier group, you don't know what you've found, right? And there could be two separate U.S. carrier groups. They'll just be the three carriers that are were historically at Midway. You also have a big pile of bombers in here. These are U.S. bombers. They're going to randomize the strike forces that hit you, and fighters, which will randomize their cap capability as well as what hits you. A lot of randomization going on here. Game did not come with dice. I noted over on the game box that I tend to try to pair my dice with the game, and these seemed particularly matching to the chopstick font, and I don't know, for whatever reason. Okay, so everything's set up. You do have a couple extra counters here. The no carrier counter is going to go in after the first carrier is drawn. It's just a mechanism to help make it possible so you end up with two carrier groups. And then this appears to be the company sort of seal of, I don't know, whatever it is. There's a word for that, but my words aren't coming out well right now. All right, each turn's an hour. You have 16 of them here, and you follow a fairly, the rules are fairly procedural, so I've read them, but they don't sink in very well, and that's common for solitaire games. Hey, you do this, then this happens, then you do this. I don't like that kind of rule book, but it seems particularly suited to solo games. Okay. So you're going to be, as the Japanese player, choosing to launch squadrons from your carriers to attack the enemy or to protect your own carriers. If you're protecting your own carriers, they're going to go in the cap box. And you can only fly fighters there. Now, you only have 4 fighters, whereas you have 6-10 bombers available to you. Okay. Now, if you're attacking and you can use, you want to send fighters to attack perhaps too, you put them in the center of the map, and that's going to indicate a flight, an attack in progress, or a flight to an attack in progress. Now, when you first launch, they just go out in the center. If they've already been there, I guess. It's not worded quite that way. It's a sparse rule book, but it makes sense. You fly towards your target, and this will rotate you southward. And strangely enough, the compass doesn't face north, which means, I mean, that's not terribly strange, but when I'm picturing it in my head, I'm thinking south, okay, that'll be down this way. And now that I'm actually at the board, I'm like, okay, so they're going to be pointing over that way, which kind of makes more sense to me for some reason. I don't know. If your squadrons are on the center of the map, you may land them, as well as ones from cap, on your carriers, and these will be rotated to face north to indicate they just landed. And then you can take carriers and make them ready for action by rotating them eastward, which is the way I've got them facing, up this way. You can only do one of these actions in each turn. If you're in the cap box, you rotate clockwise 90 degrees each turn. Once you're facing westward, I really wish there was some better play aids on, on this little chart to help with this. But once they're facing westward, i.e., that sounds like 2 turns, but they don't tell you to put them initially facing east, do they? Oh yeah, they do. Okay, cool. I mean, it's just what I would assume, but they must land, and if they're unable to find a place to land, they'll be destroyed. Each carrier can either launch or land squadrons. It can't do both in the same turn, and it cannot carry more squadrons than its number. So you've got a little bit of math here in terms of trying to make sure that your planes are landing and taking off in the right places, because you can't be doing, having squadrons taking off and others trying to land at the same time. I'm not quite sure why over an hour, but whatever. Blah, blah, blah. And then you hit this mutual reconnaissance phase, and you roll a die for the Americans. On a 5 or a 6, they find the Japanese, and that means they'll be able to attack them. For the Japanese, they have worse scouting capabilities. They need to roll a 6 in order to find the American fleet, an American fleet. If they find out that there's 2, they have to search for the second one as well. Once the 2 fleets have been detected, once all fleets have been detected, you skip this for the rest of the game. Basically, if the Japanese discover that there's 2 US fleets, then they start looking for the second one. Okay, starting on turn 3, if the Japanese fleet has been found, you're going to draw a counter from the bomber pool. There are dummies in here. If you draw a dummy, you don't get an attack. If you don't draw a dummy, if you get a bomber, you keep drawing until you get a dummy. And all those bombers are going to attack the Japanese fleet. This number doesn't change due to destruction of US carriers, I don't believe. If an attack occurs, you apply the same procedure to the US fighter pool in order to determine how many, if any, fighters are coming with the bombers. Now, it does take into account the availability of the total fighter force. And one reason for all of this is Midway had airfields. So you probably could have gotten a good number of planes onto Midway, although some planes couldn't get back after their carrier was destroyed. So we'll see. All right. Combat in the Japanese phase. Your own bomber squadrons can attack an American base or Midway by flying from the center of the map to its southeastern part. The fleet can only be attacked if it's been reported in the mutual reconnaissance phase. In order to attack it, you fly your squadrons from the center of the map to the northeastern part. So, if you're going after Midway, you move your planes here. If you're going after the fleet, you move your planes over to this side. It's just really a notational thing, but whatever. Only the bombers on their bomb side can attack the base, and only bombers on the torpedo side can attack a carrier. This is against the Americans. The Americans can bomb the Japanese carriers. If you attack an American fleet, you randomly draw a counter from the US fleet pool, which is 3 carriers there. Before drawing a second counter, then, you throw the no carrier marker into play, into the pool. And any American carriers still in the container when the dummy is drawn will be a second fleet that you're going to have to find and attack separately. Once it's drawn, the carrier dummy is removed from play. Before you attack a U.S. fleet or Midway, you have to check to see if there are any. You have to check with the U.S. fighter box by how many, if any, fighter squadrons it is protected. I don't see a U.S. fighter box, so we'll think about that for a while. Each American fighter squadron will try to shoot down the Japanese squadrons. Now, where is this U.S. fighter box? Before you attack, check with the U.S. fighter box. Alright, I'm going to have to try to look this up because, I skimmed through this in the first reading. I can't do that here. I don't have a U.S. fighter box, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I think I forgot to mention up front, I usually try to do this. This was received as a review copy. I know other people have reviewed it as well. I'm always in favor of, whatever publicity I can kind of give to newer games by presenting them, especially if like this it's not going to be a major effort. Although, obviously, if you know me, solo games are not really usually my cup of tea. But I did cover Carrier by Victory Games. And, I can kind of look at them and see why they appeal to people, but I just don't enjoy them terribly much. So I probably wouldn't accept doing a Carrier-style game again for... it was just so much. Okay, so I did find the answer to the rule in the example of play. At least I think. I think what is meant is you go over to the fighter pool and you start drawing from there. And if you get a no fighters result, you don't have a fighter. If you start getting fighters, you keep drawing them until you get a no fighter result. Now, this isn't quite as random as it seems, although the first time it is, because U.S. planes are going to be recycling over on the turn track. Okay. And yeah, I had to light a pipe in order to look at the rules, but I probably shouldn't have it in my mouth anymore while I'm looking. Okay, so if there are fighters present, what they're going to do is they're going to pair off against the Japanese fighters. If there are U.S. fighters beyond the number of Japanese fighters available, then they start hunting the bombers. Once every plane's been hit, then they go back and pair off, the second one goes up against one of the fighters, etc., continuing that process. Combat is going to be simple dice rolling. Both sides roll one die for each fighter squadron. Bombers aren't going to be able to roll. American fighters have to roll a 6 to kill a Japanese cap fighter. There's an inherent defense to cap. The Japanese, I believe, will be rolling a 5 or a 6. Yeah. The Japanese roll 5 or 6 to try to shoot down one of the American planes. Like I said, the bombers don't shoot back. If they get shot down... no. No, it looks like Cap has a disadvantage. I guess this is the Japanese, the quality of the zeros. Okay. Any surviving squadrons and dummies are going to be placed 3 hours ahead on the game turn record track. Remember how I said they cycle through? And then once the turn marker reaches their turn, they get dropped back in the fighter pool. For each squadron shot down, one fighter dummy will be taken out of the game. So the pool doesn't just end up full of, no fighters here. They try to maintain a proportionality there. And the initial proportion looks like it's 1 to 1, so that makes sense. And there aren't a lot of US fighters. There aren't a lot of Japanese fighters. Okay. After you do air combat, if you're attacking more than one carrier, you assign your bombers to the specific targets as you wish. Now they'll take anti-aircraft carrier, and each carrier under attack rolls a die. On a 5 or a 6, it aborts a single bomber. It's only aborted rather than destroyed, which means it's just going to turn back and go, and fail to make its run. Surviving bomber squadrons now attack their target. They roll 1 die each, and they have to roll a 5 or a 6 against the carrier. If they're trying to bomb Midway itself, they need a 6. If they succeed, they flip the counter over to its reduced size. It has less capacity on it in terms of squadrons. It takes 2 hits to destroy carriers or the Midway base. If the bombers were not opposed by cap, all the ships roll for anti-aircraft fire with each hit aborting 1 bomber squadron. All ships. Okay, whether or not that means does that mean they support each other? I don't know. Afterwards, 1 die is rolled for each non-aborted squadron, and all eyes showing are applied as hits. I assume I don't know what that means. My only way to count that is all the pips on the dice by eyes. So if I come in with a plane, I'm guaranteed to do 1 hit, and I may do up to 6, which seems to me that I'm almost guaranteed to sink a base. If the Midway base or an American carrier has its holding capacity reduced and no corresponding number of American squadrons has been lost in action, the missing number is taken from squadrons due to return from the turn record track as they become available. If both squadrons and fighters are eligible, remove from the game whichever category is more numerous. In case of a tie, make a random decision. Okay. All right. What about an American attack? American attacks will be similar to the Japanese with a few modifications. If there's a Japanese combat air patrol, you roll a die. On a 1 through 3, it's supposed to be fighting torpedo bombers. Otherwise, it's going after dive bombers. All attackers are either torpedo or dive bombers. Okay. After fighting torpedo bombers, the surviving Japanese cap squadrons are flipped to their low cap side for 1 turn, during which they cannot intercept dive bombers. If you have more than... No, that says after fighting torpedo bombers. So my guess is you only have a 50-50 chance of successful cap, and if you end up successfully fighting torpedo bombers, you end up at low cap, which will give you a penalty, which is to say next turn you can't intercept dive bombers. Now this could be terrible because maybe your cap is a high cap, but you're prohibited from, because of this stupid die roll thing, but you're prohibited from being able to even intercept the dive bombers. So you're like, trying to climb and get your position over that hour or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what that's meant to represent. If you have more than 1 fighter flying cap, not all of them have to be committed against incoming torpedo bombers. Now this is weird. So here's the thing. You know what? I think this is a mistake, and I'm going to look at the rolls, at the sequence example of play. Because This says dive bomber on it, and this says torpedo on it. And I think what you're going to be rolling for is which way the US plane is facing, not whether the cap is positioned in some way. I think this is just written in a way to be confusing. I'll be back. And indeed, that's the case. So yeah, you'll roll the die to see which type of bombers you're facing. And then you have to choose whether or not you want to cap them. If they're torpedo bombers, you may not want to go all the way down, because then next turn, if dive bombers come, you won't be able to protect against them. If any of the bombers get through the cap, they're assigned to the Japanese carriers. The first one goes after the Akagi, the second the Kaga. They split up. Japanese anti-aircraft fire will only hit on a 6. Now we had this other weird thing. What about this all eyes hitting? Let me look that, see if that's covered. There's a pretty good sequence of play of the happy path. I don't think it'll cover a no cap situation. So we don't know what that rule is about right now very much. Okay, so actually the sequence of play covers all of this. I missed one thing over here in the cap rules for air combat. When you're attacking bombers with your fighters, yeah, you hit them on a 5 or a 6, and you abort them on a 3 or a 4. Remember, the anti-air just aborts them. When you get to the bombing the all eyes, what that rule means is you don't have to assign, and it's not worded clearly enough to express this, you don't have to assign your bombers to the carriers if you're not facing cap. You just roll dice, and the way it looks from here, one plane gets through, it rolls a 6, it ends up sinking 3 of the carriers that way, with all planes aboard. Okay, let's keep going. Squadrons, anti-aircraft fire, Japanese anti-aircraft fire only hits on a 6. By hit, I think it means aborts the American planes. Damage to a carrier only reduces the holding capacity. At the end of the American phase, all surviving American bombers and dummies that have gone on a strike are put 5 hours in advance. Now I have a question here. Yeah, okay, so they say the American attacks are resolved similar to the Japanese with a few modifications. So these are the modifications. So again, if you get through the cap, you get to blow up the Japanese planes, as the example shows. Okay, or the Japanese ships, as the example shows. Victory points for the game. Every 2 squadrons destroyed are worth, every second enemy squadron destroyed is worth half a victory point. Okay, so I guess they're essentially worth a quarter point each, but you round up on the halves or something. Enemy carriers are damaged. That's worth 1 point. Carrier sunk, it's 2 points if it's just the Soryu or Hiryu, 3 points if it's any other carrier in the game, and Midway is only worth 1 victory point. You really want to kill the carriers, but Midway's an easier target early in the game. That's it. Now, given that this took 20-something minutes to do the intro, victory condition, how you assess the victory, you just compare it on here, and I mean, you know, it's a major victory if you get 6 or more point swing. Given how long this has taken, I guess we're going to give this its own little video, and we'll probably give the review its own little video too, since somebody paid to ship this to me, right?